Mama, when we are teaching our children, what is it that we always hear? Consistency, consistency, consistency. It's key. But what if there's a strategy that's even more effective? And most of us forget about it. Hi, it's Christy here from Moms Find Truth. And I want to start off by saying I am not downplaying the importance of consistency. But for as many times as I have preached it, I have also found it to not be enough. So it's important. An important ingredient, but it's not enough. It's not all you need. And I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So a little while back, a good while back now, I was teaching my oldest kids manners, just general pleases and thank yous, friendly appearance when speaking to someone, friendly responses. And I will tell you, it was like talking to a brick wall. I was consistent as all get out, but was getting nowhere. So I kept saying the things that are always said. Maybe I just need to give them more time. They're young. They just need some patience. And I just kept waiting and trying to use the patience and consistency and more patience and consistency. Nothing. But I remember there was one day that I was frustrated with the fact that this was getting nowhere. And I felt like every 3 seconds during the day, I was reminding, consistently reminding. And I was just somewhat fed up. I was like, I don't know what I'm missing. And so then they would say something that was not on point, and I would respond. I didn't hear you say please. You need to say please. I didn't hear you say thank you. You need to say thank you. And then the best one, you need to say that more nicely. That was not said nicely. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, Mom, that was not said nicely. Mom, you did not say please. Mom, you did not say thank you. Now, the argument has been made to me that we're the mom, we're the parent, we're the authority. They should be obeying us. We should not have to ask nicely. Okay, maybe we don't have to ask nicely. Maybe our children should obey us no matter how we're asking or commanding or forcing or whatever that looks like. Yes, they still should obey us. But ultimately, what is our job? Our job is to train them up in the way they should go. Our job is to emulate Christ in their life and to teach them to emulate him as well. Our job is to display to them the perfect love of Christ personified in their life. Our job is to use every tool within our possession to lovingly train them up in the way they should go. And without exception, in my experience, the strongest tool in our tool belt as parents is our personal example. So, at the end of the day, what does that mean? Mama, that means that if we don't like our child's behavior, we need to look in the mirror. Ouch. I'm saying this is a lesson I've learned, not a lesson I daily live out. It still hurts. It is still so epically convicting because I would say the majority of the behaviors that my children struggle with, they struggle with because of the parental examples in their life. And if we are not going above and beyond, even if we've now conquered that behavior in ourselves, if we are not going above and beyond to demonstrate an example in the opposite corner, we are making it harder for them to change their habits, the habits that are there in the first place because of a negative example on our part. So when we're talking about consistency, why is it not enough? Well, ultimately, if we look through the life of Christ, when he was on earth, he was a walking example of what he's calling us to. There were even things he did that were unnecessary in and of themselves outside of the purpose of being an example to us. Prime example, his baptism. He did not need his sins washed away. He did not need to get saved. He needed to be an example of what he was calling us to. So he can sit there and preach it all day long. And did he preach? Was he consistent in what he said? Yes. But what did he lean on even more? Was showing us the right way. Am I required to sweetly ask my children to obey me? No, I'm not required that. And they're not required to hear it said nicely in order to obey it. But what I am required to do is to be a Christ-like example. And again, if I'm calling them to fulfill a certain behavior, being the example of that is Christ-like. So can consistency and discipline alone never work? Not necessarily. But will adding a strong example to that improve our relationship with our children and ultimately give them a more Christ-like example to follow? Yes. And it will also make it easier for them to change habits, because not only are they hearing what we're telling them to do, but they're seeing the daily example of it. It's going to be almost a natural change for them because it's now what they're surrounded by. It's the influence that they have. So I gave the example of speaking nicely and manners, pleases and thank yous. But what are some other areas where this is applicable? One would be having joy. If your child is not flourishing in joy throughout the day, again, it's time to look in the mirror. If what they're surrounded by throughout the day is joy, they will learn joy. And we can tell them to be joyful, and we can discipline them for grumpiness, and we can show them verses in the Bible that talk about having joy. But ultimately, until we are daily demonstrating joy in every circumstance to them, it's probably not going to be very effective. Kind of in that same vein is the way we or they respond to frustrating or anxious or chaotic circumstances. Again, we can walk them through the ideal way to respond and the logical way to respond in difficult circumstances. But yet, if they see us respond negatively, we know what's going to win there. And sometimes if we are on point with how we respond in the good situations and the bad, we really don't even have to preach that much because it's going to be the accepted norm. They're going to learn. They are sponges. They're going to learn to respond in how they see us respond. And then there's so many examples. This is applicable in things like keeping their rooms clean, keeping their spaces clean. How are we managing our rooms and our home? Speaking well of others behind their back. Things like loving the outdoors and thriving in doing hard things, and areas of self-discipline and exercise and not leaning on instant gratification. All of these we can lead by our example. And ultimately, the highest trait that we can lead by example in is being always ready to share Christ with those around us. It is easy to teach the theory of those around us who are not saved are going to die and go to hell. But that falls very flat if they never see us share Christ with anyone. But if it is just part of our conversation when we are engaging with someone and we find out that they have a different belief, that we start letting the conversation go in that direction and then share the truth with them. It is going to be, again, we are creating the accepted norm for our child. We cannot change all of the accepted norm in all of society, but we can decide what the accepted norm is for our children. We are deciding what the accepted norm is for our children. but what are we deciding it will be? And it's not based on the consistency of what comes out of our mouth. It's based on the consistency of our example. So ultimately, consistency is enough, but it's not just consistency in what we're saying or what we're correcting them in. It's a consistency of how we live our life. Okay, so does that sound good? Or maybe does it sound a little bit overwhelming? Well, I don't want to leave you there. So, what's the next steps? Step number 1, and this is what I'm asking you to do here, is to change potentially a good number of habits in your life, really throughout your day. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls that young moms nowadays fall into is having the wrong perspective on getting rest. I think there's a certain perspective that is being pushed nowadays that says that when you're a young mommy, you're just going to be sleep deprived. You're just going to struggle with getting good rest at night. And I think that is very false. That is a very faulty perspective. And I would like to shift how we view getting rest as a young mom. And to do that, in order to do that, I have put together a free masterclass, hour-long masterclass, where I dive into exactly how I have set up our home so that literally everyone in our home, I'm deciding, or me and my husband are deciding how long our children are sleeping and how long we are getting to sleep, so that everyone in our home is sleeping through the night, every night. I firmly believe that moms can set up their homes so that everyone in it is getting good sleep, which then sets you up to respond well throughout the next day and all the days to come. So step number 1 is click on the link below and sign up for the Rested Mommy Masterclass. And then step number 2 is a video that should be popping up here any moment now. And it is motivation for mommies. Because even if you are well rested, there's a lot of things that can pull down our motivation and our drive and our desire to be intentional. And I want to walk you through how, in those difficult moments, to pull yourself back up and continue to tackle your day. All right, that's all I've got. But remember, I'm always here if you need me. Bye.